Than anybody else?
I believe we're expecting Chief Riddick.
Okay,
Casey
so
Riccabon is Chief Riddick joining us, or is that him on there right now?
He should be coming on momentarily.
okay, here he is.
Nancy Terra's there as well.
Okay. All right. Hi, gentlemen. All right, so we can go ahead and get started now. All right. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our public safety meeting. Today is Wednesday, I don't even know what day it is. May 4th. I was going to say May 2nd. Can tell what I'm doing at work. Thank you, everybody, for attending this evening. It seems like we haven't been here for a little bit of time. So I'm glad to see all the faces around the virtual screen. Before I get started, though, I do want to just acknowledge our Ukrainian people as they continue to just live in what I think is a nightmare, and how my heart, and I'm sure all of our prayers go out to them, and just pray that this war ends real soon. I just don't know how these people are surviving, and I just think about them every day, all day. So I just again want to just take a moment of silence out to remember the number of lives that have been lost to this war. Thank you. All right, and then I just want to recognize everyone around the virtual screen, Mr. Town Manager Rick Ledwith, Councilor Billings Smith, Councilor Alberto Cortez, Fire Marshal Grimaldi, Chief Priest and Chief Riddick, and the Assistant Chief and our emergency management person, Mr. McHugh, and Officer, and I don't see your full name on your shirt, so forgive me if I'm not saying your name correctly, but it looks like Officer, is it Haran?
Hopkins, ma'am.
Hopkins. Okay, I see the P that looks like an R because I'm vision impaired. So, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
AC Tira, AC Rockabon. Thank you all for being here. And of course, Jarida for always, getting us straight and making sure that everything operates without a hitch. Thank you. I also just want to acknowledge all the great work that you all continue to do. I know between last month and even though this month is just begun, that you have been doing yeoman's work out in the community between the fire that happened about a week or so ago and all of the police activity that's been happening in town, especially the recent one where you guys really had to jump into action and really keep our community safe. And so I don't have a hat on, but I salute you, for everything that you all do each and every day. That's why I always say that West Hartford is a very safe town. And that's one of the reasons that attracted me to this town because I wanted to be able to walk our streets and know that my kids can walk and ride their bikes and feel safe. So, again, just thank you for all that you do each and every day. And I know that you all wouldn't be the great leaders you are without the team that stands behind you and beside you. So, thank you. All right. So, with that said, call the meeting to order. And then under the business items, approval of the minutes. I know when I read the minutes, I didn't see any corrections or any errors. I don't know if anybody else did. If you did, please let me know. Otherwise, Mr. Town Manager, we can go ahead and consider those minutes approved for March 3rd, 2022. And then for communications, I don't know, we have something on the agenda for communications. Otherwise, we can go right into our staff reports. Mr. Town Manager, you're on mute. I don't hear you.
So sorry about that, Madam Chair. Rick Ledwith, Acting Town Manager. Good to see everyone, and couldn't agree with your opening comments more, Madam Chair, in terms of what our police and fire mean to our community day in and day out. And certainly we've seen a lot of activity in both departments over the last month or so. So I as well tip my hat to both our fire personnel as well as our police personnel, and both chiefs have become my new best friend over the last couple of months, as I seem to talk to them about 7 days a week. So, but we can get on to business this evening. Before I turn things over to the chief, I just wanted to take a moment to recognize Fire Chief Priest. I just want to take a moment to recognize the chief and his command staff for their hard work in organizing and managing this past Monday's award ceremonies, in which we had the opportunity to recognize the hard work of nearly 50 firefighters for their achievements over the last couple of years. In this ceremony, we also had the opportunity to recognize the work of several police officers who worked closely with the fire department over various incidents over the last couple of years. Also had the chance to recognize a couple of civilians, including our director of West Hartford and Bloomfield Health District, Amy Krause, as well as our emergency management. I call him our deputy director, Bob McHugh, our emergency manager, who works in our emergency management division, for their hard work, especially over the last 2 years, and helping keep our community safe through the pandemic. So just wanted to mention that before I turn things over to Chief Priest, where he will give an update on some of the activities that are happening within the fire department. Chief? You're on mute, Chief.
I just wanted to follow your lead, sir, making sure mine wasn't working either. So I was going to lead with a little bit of a joke too. I speak with Chief Riddick on a regular basis. Sometimes when you get onto these meetings, you wonder when this is going to stop. But I truly, truly appreciate the support. It is Firefighter Appreciation Day as well. So, coming onto this meeting, it's really nice to represent the men and women of the fire department in their accomplishments on a daily basis. Rick, Mr. Town Manager, you've alluded to our ceremony. I really feel like it went fairly well. One thing that I would add on to that is we did offer our highest award that day to Lieutenant Howe for the Firefighter's Cross, and that was for saving a life in an off-duty capacity. And I really appreciate that you've brought out that we've recognized other folks throughout our department, but in other areas, especially in community risk reduction. It's an all-encompassing term, as well as our operations folks out there. So again, thanks to all of our elected officials, both local and state. Earlier today, a cancer bill was actually passed in the House. That was a really important accomplishment. I know there was some conflict over it as well, so I appreciated watching that process occur. And then locally to our elected officials who supported us at budget time, but also by attending our Fire Ops 101, so they really truly understand a little bit about how the fire service works. Really appreciate it. Madam Chair, you've actually referenced the Lilly Road fire as well. That was an accidental cause with no injuries, but a significant fire. I'm very, very proud of our operations folks. I know that fires go out. I would like to highlight also the tail end of that as well, which is something that we call a post-incident neighborhood outreach, or a PINO program. That's where we're out in the neighborhood connecting with folks about community risk reduction, providing them with smoke detectors. But overall, having a fire in your neighborhood is very stressful, anxiety producing. So we go out there and reassure folks and allow them the opportunity to speak with our fire personnel to make sure that they're safe and feel comfortable. As we were preparing for this meeting, our training battalion chief, Mark Bassett, wanted me to provide a short shout out to both Channel 61, West Hill Automotive, and Elmwood Automotive for providing us some cars for a recent extrication demonstration, as well as to supplement our rescue training. That was very important for us because finding vehicles is hard for us to source. It helps with our training. And then the Department of Public Works also assisted by placing the cars for us. So it's important to acknowledge those folks. We also at that ceremony promoted two folks, two of our members, Captain Brian Antigiovanni and Lieutenant Phillips. We celebrate their promotion, look forward to them going into their new roles. And really, that is all that I have for my report. I have something submitted in writing. I would be glad to answer any questions that I would have. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Priest, for that report. That was excellent. Anybody have any questions for Chief Priest? Okay. And thank you, Chief Priest, because for me, that's interesting to learn that after an incident or an event like that, you do provide that education, awareness to the neighbors and to the community, especially since they are probably in a heightened state. So thank you for that, because that's information that I then can share with others. All right. Next up is Chief Riddick.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Just going to run through a few things. Chief Priest has put a lot of pressure on me. I think it's a record for his shortest presentation ever. Well done. From where you started, going for an hour and a half to now 5 minutes, I'm very, very impressed. Well done. Well done. On April 1st, you may have remembered we had an incident on 56 Fairlawn. An individual was firing a weapon outside of his house. Our ESU team and patrol officers were responded to the team. We were able to safely effect an arrest without anyone being injured. And Mr. Cassidy, John Cassidy, was arrested for a plethora of charges. We exercised a great amount of discretion, and to get him into custody without any officers firing a firearm is a really, really good job and good training. So we're very helpful, happy about that. On April 6th, we had a suicidal individual on Oakwood Overpass. Officer Shimo was able to talk that person down. They were up and scaled over the fence and were teetering over the highway. So she did a really good job, kept her cool and calm and to get her over and that person without being injured. Just a couple nights ago, you may have seen the news release we had on Robin Road, a situation with an individual who did threaten to shoot our police officers. Responded on scene. Our ESU team again was deployed. We had good cooperation with our patrol officers, set up a perimeter. The person did come out without incident, which we're very pleased and helpful. We did recover 2 weapons. At the time, we thought they were firearms. As it turns out, one was a .22 caliber pellet gun, and the other was some type of rifle, double-barrel rifle that shot out arrows probably about 2 to 3 feet long with prongs on the end, and it's used to hunt bears and or deers. So that is definitely a deadly weapon. Again, we utilized the minimum amount of force, good discretion. In my opinion, definitely a deadly force situation that was avoided. And I just want to commend all of our officers and the supervisors and the personnel who responded and handled that situation without anyone being injured. Our detective division, working with DLC regarding one of our previous investigations. The individual who's been previously arrested was making phone calls out of the jail, trying to harass and intimidate one of the witnesses that we had taken statements from. Good cooperation and collaboration, working with the state's attorney's office. We were able to end DLC to secure an arrest warrant, and the judge put a $500,000 bond on this individual for their action. So, well done by our detective bureau going forward with that, and excellent cooperation and collaboration with other folks. Moving forward to our CSU, our community support unit, we did make an arrest warrant is forthcoming for, we've identified a suspect whose name I will not give at this point, for several catalytic converter thefts that have occurred within the town. So really good work on gathering that intelligence and working forward to identify this person and secure an arrest warrant. So that'll be really, really good work once we gather him. On a motor vehicle stop about a week and a half ago, we were able to recover 231 illegal fentanyl pills. and we arrested the operator of the vehicle for illegal possession and sale of narcotics. Last Saturday was DEA drug take back day, and we're able to take in 305 pounds of prescription pills. That's a huge amount of things to take in. Well done. Our auto theft task force, as you guys know, it's a regional task force with Hartford, ourselves, Simsbury, Farmington, New Britain, a bunch of police departments working together. Those established back in October and going through April. They've recovered 189 stolen vehicles, 76 stolen vehicle arrests, 17 firearms were recovered, 74 arrest warrants served, and 32 classified as other arrests. Distracted driving grant. This is from April 1st through April 30th. We conducted 286 motor vehicle stops. Of those, 100 infractions for cell phone violations and 84 warnings. We also issued 13 infractions for texting while driving and gave out 2 warnings, 1 DUI, 1 summons for a suspended license, 11 for speeding, and 49 warnings for speeding. So again, we were out there, and a really good job to keep our community safe. Supernumerary update, year to date through April, we have our officers working, and we've pulled in $188,000 for the town. Again, just as a reminder, the supernumerary program was put in with cooperation with the town and the union, and these are our retirees who are working these jobs. So if our retirees did not work these jobs, this is revenue that have been lost to the town. A lot of mention of crime townwide, statewide, nationwide. We have not finished our data collection for April, but through March, overall for our Part 1 crime, we are down 33%. If you round up, it's like a 33.9. We're actually down 34%. And as a reminder, our Part 1 crime includes murder, sexual assault, robbery, burglary, theft from vehicle, auto theft, and negligent homicide. So again, testament to our officers and the job that they're doing out there, these collaborations with other towns, and these task force are really paying dividends. Lastly, I've already submitted the action plan, which you should have had an opportunity to review already. I just want to highlight just a couple of things. I'm going to go to the end and then work my way backwards. On the last page, bullet number 9, it talks about increasing minority hiring to better reflect town demographics. It's an ongoing situation. We brought in for cultural competency and DEI training, Dr. Lorenzo Boyd. He's a nationally recognized expert in his field. He is a professor at UNH, and he came in and provided training for our entire police department. And, for police officers and law enforcement, sometimes we could be a little cranky. And, when it comes to different training, the response that we received to this training was overwhelmingly positive and even surprised me. I haven't had one individual who says, "Oh, here we go again." It was effective, and it got to the point. Everybody went through it, including myself and the upper command staff. So we're very pleased with that. Our partnership with social services and the social worker, Samantha Ennis, for the last month of April, she had 24 referrals via email, phone, and walk-ins, and that partnership's working out really well. Currently, we're working on the encampment by Kane Street, and she's been very instrumental with us to get that dismantled, as well as finding locations and help for those individuals in need. Lastly, going up now to number 1, if you recall, we provided a presentation in the latter part of 2021 regarding our Hannock area and the program we wanted to initiate with our students and the youth in that area. We was very well received. Officer Hopkins and others put up a very good PowerPoint presentation. Officer Hopkins is here this evening to talk about the program, some of the outcomes, maybe a couple negatives of corrective action we could be taking. and as well as provide information on what we plan on doing going forward. So with your permission, Madam Chair, through you, I'd like to turn it over to Officer Hopkins to discuss this program.
Yes, please.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Chief Riddick. Before I get started, just to echo, just because I went through that, I went through a year-long program with Dr. Boyd as well on cultural training, and even just speaking to fellow officers about what we received from the training. Again, was overwhelmingly positive on my side too, from who I spoke to. That program, like I mentioned back when myself, Officer Sanford, and Officer Casella spoke, we did put together a program through Dr. Boyd's program that we sat in on, called the Connecticut Institute of Youth and Police Relations. We partnered with the HANIC program. We completed a 6-week pilot program, which was overwhelmingly positive. It was a great experience. We had up to 20 students ranging from grades 3 to grades 8. We were actually able to add Community Relations Officer Santora as part of our partnership. So we were able to split it up. Officer Casella and Officer Santora worked with the elementary grades, while myself and Officer Sanford worked with the middle school age students who were going to be coming to the high schools, as we're both the school resource officers at Hall and Conard. We discussed numerous topics with them, ranging from social media, substance abuse, bullying, peer pressure, and finished out our program with what we can do for our community, which capped off cleaning up the HANIC area, doing a big sweep of their play area and the area that surrounded the HANIC Center to make it a safer environment for them. Some more of the positives, we were able to pull different specialized divisions to come down and give a brief presentation to the students, which they loved. We had canine officers come down and do a demonstration, which the kids absolutely loved to see the dog do some tracking and some obedience. We had a couple members of our ESU team come down with the armored vehicle, the Bearcat, and did a group demonstration on kind of like what it's used for. The kids were able to see the inside, take pictures. We had our animal control officer come in, had some interesting dialogue regarding animal control, which was at the end, very positive at the end, and was able to show some of the drone pilots. Were able to show some of the drones. So it was a great experience. The kids did enjoy it. Obviously, with COVID, there were some bumps in the road. Obviously, we had to shorten the program. At the start of the program, we had several local businesses in town, which I was grateful for, were able to, willing to donate food to the students to kind of help the parents and the guardians. Some of them might be working, and obviously the HANIC Center is a good resource for them to be able to, get their kids' homework done, give them snacks, give them possibly food for the night. And we were able to provide that once some of the restrictions were lifted, which was awesome. Big shout out to Angelina's Pizza, AC Peterson's, which I think Assistant Chief Tara enjoyed as well. And a couple other, we had Bird Code that was willing to participate. We had Doro Restaurants, which was willing to participate. Ocho Cafe, Effie's, all these restaurants I was in contact with. They were super awesome, and they're willing to participate in the future, which we're super excited about. We did, there were some things that we plan on speaking with Miss Oslander, who ran the HANIC program, and their representatives to ways to make everything better. Obviously, there's always room for improvement. We plan on rebooting this program and making it into a bigger, better monster than what we have right now. We're still in contact with our representatives from CIYPR that are kind of helping to guide us through this process. And in the end, we're just trying to show them, again, we're bridging that gap. We're trying to show them that we're there as a resource. We're providing them resources. Every week they had we gave them a drawstring bag, and we told them every week to bring that drawstring bag because we wanted to keep filling that bag, and we kept having souvenirs for them to take home the next day, the next day, the next day. And, we never had students that didn't come back, which was awesome. We actually had kids that showed up to take part in the program. We even had parents come out for the demonstrations. It was really cool. And again, the goal is we did this program with so many other municipalities, and the goal is to help these students network and meet other people. We're still in contact with our partners from Hartford and East Hartford, and they run their programs differently, but in the end, they also have resources that maybe we don't, such as, the Yard Goats are a willing participant for the Hartford group, the Excel Center. And that's stuff where these, our students in West Hartford have the opportunity to network with other students from other cities and other towns. And ultimately, it can be a really positive experience for these students. So again, we're working with the Hannock Center to, build this into something special and something that can be sustainable for the future.
Thank you, Officer Hopkins. Madam Chair, that concludes the police report. We can entertain any questions.
Thank you, Chief Riddick. Do we have any questions for the chief? Counselor?
You, Madam Mayor. Chief Riddick, so my question is, are we doing, thinking ahead, looking ahead, with the ATV stuff that was starting to become a problem last year. And then if you look at social media, they're like building, getting vehicles in already and planning, to do their little, what do you call them, parades? Somebody had called them. Is there anything different besides it? I know we added the ordinance where you can find certain people, but any plans upcoming that, can kind of help curb the stuff, or, maybe even task force going on statewide?
That's through you, Madam Chair. That's one of the objectives of the Greater Hartford Auto Theft Task Force, is part of that too. The obvious thing is just seeing the task force out there doing their things, but the behind the scenes is the intelligence gathering, which is the important part. Where is the meet and greets going to happen? Who's participating? How many people? Where are they gathering? Is it on private property, public property? What can we do to seize them before they either get to someplace or to corral them if they're safely at a location? Moreover, don't forget, we also have our drone program, and part of our vision going forward with that was to utilize that for intelligence gathering and to get involved with a pursuit. And Hartford also has several drones too. So you say start. No, we never stop planning with that because it's predictable. And as we always say, if it's predictable, it's preventable. If it's predictable, it should be manageable.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief. Counselor Billings Smith, do you have any questions?
I don't.
Thank you. I do just have a couple of questions and comments. So Chief Riddick, just a quick question out of curiosity in terms of the vehicle stops. How is that planned when you're looking at rolling that out? Is it based on any high activity in any particular areas of town or seasonal? And what I'm thinking of is as the weather begins to change and get warmer, people like to do crazier things. I guess, not real sure. But can you speak to that a little bit?
Certainly, without giving all of our secrets out. But,
Please don't do that.
But it's the grant, so that helps us with the financial component of this. And then you go to your high frequency area, Albany Street, right here, town center, just to be in these areas when you see people on the phones for distracted driving, Trout Brook. So that's all. There really is no secret. People know where we are. And tactically, they wouldn't know it, but sometimes we could use a drone. And then other times we have people dressed in plain clothes, looking like they're walking up and down the street. And it's actually an officer who is an observer who then calls out the vehicle description, the operator description, and what they're driving, where they're going. And then a marked unit will pull them over.
And then, as you were talking, something else kind of came to mind. So, you know how we have, and I don't know what you call them, so you can educate me, but the speed limit um, cameras that tells you when you're going above the speed limit to slow down. How are those monitored to determine um, traffic speed, especially in your community neighborhood? So, for instance, I know on occasion we'll get cars speeding down our street, and it looks like it's more towards dusk or maybe early in the morning when either students or people are late to work. So, I'm just curious, how does that work? Or does it?
Um, you're really putting it on me tonight. Can we have an executive session, or can you call me afterwards regarding that?
I could do
It does collect data. It puts people to warn them, and it gives us some information as what the speeds are, what time of day it's occurring, which helps us with our traffic enforcement and details and deployments later on. Going back to your earlier question, for some of these stops, here's the areas that we actually focused on this last month. North Main Street at Mohawk, South Quaker at Park Road, New Britain at Mayflower, Farmington at North Main, New Britain at Ridgewood, Farmington at Boulevard at South Highland, Asylum at North Quaker, Farmington at Whiting, Beechwood at South Main, Prospect at Kane, New Park and Oakwood, Ridgewood and Sedgwick, Park at South Main, and Farmington at Mountain.
Okay.
So we're all over.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. All right. Thank you.
Yep.
And then I have a question for Officer Hopkins. And you answered some of them in your comments because I was going to ask you if parents or guardians come and either observe and attend. And I know many of them work. So I was just curious if any of them are able to. And then you did mention that. And then I have one other question in terms of from the youth.
Yeah, it was actually really cool. It was a lot, obviously the kids are from the neighborhood, and in speaking with Miss Oslander and everyone else who helps out with the program, these kids come themselves. It's not something where they're dropped off there. They come willingly. And their parents, they kind of, after like the first week, kind of gathered like, okay, they do demonstrations, and some of them started to stay, and they were taking videos and watching their kids and smiling and seeing kind of how they enjoyed it. And then after the demonstration was over, they were able to leave, and we went in and did our thing inside, and they were back as soon as it was time for them to go. One thing that we had originally planned on, as a start of the program, which we kind of want to bring back, is almost doing like when we do that final day of the program, we want to invite parents to
Mhm.
take part in the actual event of the last day. Like, um, unfortunately, due to COVID, like I said originally, because we weren't allowed to have food for the kids because it wasn't prepackaged, and then we thought we were going to have a couple hours with them, and we actually only ended up having around an hour and a half with them. So the idea is to have a time where we can be with them longer, and to have these parents present, as like a final thing, to be like, this is what we're doing with your kids, or and we want you to feel, if you have questions, if there's anything that you'd like us to address, if there's anything, moving forward, and we're open to ideas. That's kind of like why we want to work with them to try and figure out where we can improve and make this thing so much better.
Thank you for that. And then my other question was, as you engage with the youth and they have that open dialogue where they can ask you questions, I'm just curious, what types of questions are they asking you all as officers? Because what I see is some future officers in those youth there.
Some of the questions are interesting. I mean, I think because they're younger, it's a little different. A lot of it was, I was actually surprised. A lot of it was, they were, we were there to listen.
Yeah.
And in listening to them, they were so excited to tell us about what they enjoyed to do and what they do in school. And I think the good thing about the group that we had is there were still some kids that were a little skeptical talking to us and a little on the quieter side.
Mhm.
But it was interesting that they were a little quieter, but at the same time, they were engaged in the conversation. So when we reached out and were like trying to promote conversation, they were still in tune with everything. They knew what was going on. It wasn't like they were just kind of like minding their own business and had no idea what was going on. And they always came back, which was super special. I think that because they were a younger, like I said, a younger group, a lot of the questions that they were asking were a little, some of them were a little far fetched.
Mhm.
I know that they got a little, some of them, their questions with the demonstrators, some of the other officers in terms of like the canines and asking kind of like, what does the dog do? And what do you guys do? Do you guys just go out and, do you just go out and bite people? And, getting that explanation on, no, this is what we do. This is what the dog is used for. We're not just going out and intimidating people with dogs. Same thing with animal control. I know, some of the questions posed is towards animal control at the end when they talked about how sometimes with sick animals they have to be put down or whatever. Some of the kids were like, oh, I don't like animal control if that's what you're going to do to animals. And we were able to actually take a step back, be like, well, explain yourself, why do you feel that way? And at the end of it, the
Mhm.
students were like, all right, I like animal control again. I
Mhm.
understand why you do it to help the animals. And um, I think that in having those conversations with everything, with the specialized divisions and with us and what we do in the schools,
Mhm.
that's what myself and Officer Nick Sanford do during the day. They gained a better understanding of our roles and why we're doing what we're doing. And, um, any kind of preconceived notions of what we do were answered a little bit. So it was an all around positive experience and something that we all enjoyed doing.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. It really sounds like it, and it's great work what you're doing, and just really shining a bright light on public safety and police officers and the role and the job that you take on. That is to protect, really is to protect, and to really serve the community. And it's not just what we see on television through that small lens. That's only a small part of it. So just thank you, to you and the team and to Chief Riddick and to everybody for doing the work that you do, especially for our young people, because that's when they're like sponges and very impressionable. And what they're learning from you all is something that they're going to have with them going forward and for the rest of their life. And they're going to always remember you, that's for sure, and your partner whenever they see you out and about. So
Right.
thank you. Thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you so much.
All right. Anything else? Mr. Ledwith?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Rick Ledwith, Acting Town Manager. Just had one more thing that wanted to give the committee an update on. Councilor Cortez and I were actually talking about this at the beginning of the last town council meeting. And it has to do with House Bill 5417, which passed overwhelmingly at the House, was put through to the Senate. And I believe it's still in the package that's in front of the governor right now for signature with the overall budget. So, but I'll find out for sure. But essentially what this bill does is it makes adjustments to the existing juvenile justice laws and really came into play around some of the things the chief talked about, the stolen automobile task force and Obviously, over the last couple of years, we've seen an increase in stolen cars, and some of those have been committed by juveniles. So that's what this House bill is really trying to approach, is making some changes in those juvenile laws. So a couple things that the law does: it does work with the judicial branch to speed up juvenile arraignments, which is important. It does require GPS monitoring for repeat juvenile offenders. It does provide some flexibility with the current 6-hour hold at a community correction center if the arresting officer is in the process of seeking a detention center. But at the same time, it does provide additional funding to the judicial branch, which is important as well, to provide more educational programs for the juveniles. And if they're on probation, get them involved in after-school sports, on-the-job training. So certainly there's a punitive perspective with the changes, but there's also more funding for educational programs as well to assist these juveniles. So that's where the law stands now, or the bill stands now as written. Certainly, if anything comes out of the governor's ultimate signature with any changes, we'll let you guys know. But thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ledwith. Okay. Anybody have anything else? Questions or comments? All right. Any future agenda? Oh, I'm
Mr.
sorry.
Cortez.
Councilor Cortez.
So through you, Madam Mayor, so with that being said, with the bill, that that's kind of a win, and it goes back to the resolution thing, and what do we do as a town? Another thing that went through, wasn't sure, I think it was through the Senate, was a catalytic converter, where it's a lot difficult to sell them back to places, and I think we're heading in the right direction. So how do we put something together? It took time. It took a long time to get here. We've been talking about this since last summer, and trying to get legislators back into session to address this. 5417, step, we say it over and over again, step in the right direction. It could do a little bit more on two ends, as far as the accountability piece, it touches it, but also the funding for education. When you look at the dollars, it's not a whole lot. And, how accessible is that to the community? But, with, stuff as Officer Hopkins is doing, in West Hartford, we're doing a pretty good job about it. But, and all the work that the PD is doing, we don't want it to go to waste, right? We're making arrests, we're solving, we're dealing with the issues as they come, but then, it's up to the state, and what happened, and is it not all for nothing, it is for something, but then it's like back to the drawing board. So, do we craft something, and be proactive, as far as a resolution, and say, hey, or do we support this, say, what, there's good legislation in place, and do a resolution, and we're going to continue supporting our PD and highlight some of these things. I know I said a lot, and I'm long-winded sometimes, so I apologize.
Well, through you, Madam Chair, we will certainly follow the council's lead in terms of any kind of legislation or resolution you may want to pursue. But we are appreciative as well of these changes, and to your point, Councilor Cortez, it is a step in the right direction.
Yes, and I would agree, and we could have a further discussion. There was one thing that I did want to ask, because I'll be totally honest, I haven't been following the bill other than what I've heard on the news, since I work for the Department of Public Health. I'll just put that out there. But I want to know, is there a piece in there about parental or guardian responsibility? Because we are talking about juveniles, and I know we've spoken to this on this committee in the past, because so many of these things are happening when juveniles should be under the supervision of parents or guardians. So how should we hold parents and guardians responsible as well? I mean, we can provide all the things that the bill is covering, but you know, I won't like date myself, but I do remember when I was a juvenile, you know, we had to be in at a certain time. Otherwise, your parents or your grandparents or the neighbor came looking for you if they happened to be watching you because your parents were at work and nobody was calling DCF at the time.
I do sit on the legislative committee for the CPCA. There was numerous discussions of different options. Uh, that did come up to a level, but it quickly got quashed. We don't see that happening. And there's an element of fairness to the responsibility, but some fairness with some of these kids. So I can't speak for the legislature, but I can say with our conversation, we don't see that occurring. And lastly, through you, Madam Chair, you know, one thing I forgot to mention, and Chief Priest and I, in our respective departments, a couple years ago, pre-COVID, we had planned like a joint public safety day with, you know, FD and PD, bringing out our toys, you know, the Hannock area, the Britton Ave area, or wherever, and with our respective unions also providing, you know, hot dogs and hamburgers. So we do plan on revisiting that now that the restrictions have been lifted, and we'll see how these numbers go and pulling something off this summer, including ice cream too. And again, free of charge for the community. So I want to give credit to the FD and PD unions because they're going to be the ones that are going to be funding that. So that's all. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Chief. And that's a great idea. So I would love to see that, you know, materialize. All right. All right, so I didn't hear anything about any future agenda items. All right, so then we'll move to adjournment. And I think we kept it pretty short, so still have a lot of time to go out and do some really good things with your families. And I like ice cream, so you can always have some of that too, or some frozen yogurt. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have an enjoyable rest of the week and an enjoyable weekend.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great job, Officer Hopkins. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.